So now we will switch gear to a total different domain. I know people talk about AI applications. We talk about it in enterprise, in games, in finance. But one important area is healthcare. Due to very limited time constraint, we only have one talk today, and it's going to be given by Alex Ermolaev, and he is the director of AI at Change Healthcare. Let's welcome Alex.
Hello, my name is Alex Ermolaev. I actually got original AI degree more like 20 years ago, and over time I got a chance to play with different technologies. Over time, obviously didn't expect it to come back in such a huge way, but that's where we are. Over the years, I got a chance to work for several large companies. I used to work for Bell Labs, Microsoft, NVIDIA. I also got a chance to build a couple of startups. Right now, I work for Change Healthcare. So Change Healthcare is one of the largest information technology companies in the United States. We manage about 20% of medical imaging in the United States on only the software side. We don't do hardware. We manage about 60% of medical claims, which is about $2 trillion. We manage 20% of the healthcare records, medical records, largest lab network, largest evidence-based medicine, and a bunch of different other products. In total, we have about 150 different products. And Change Healthcare, as a large company, always had several people doing AI. So there were like a couple data scientists in one area, a couple in another area. But about 18 months ago, the company decided to get serious about AI. And the premise is we have the largest amount of healthcare data in the United States. So if somebody can succeed in AI, it should be us. So we created a centralized AI team. Right now, it grew from 4 people 18 months ago to about 50 today. And we basically apply AI to all of the business units we have. So why healthcare? Well, many of you probably don't know, but healthcare is #1 industry in the United States by revenue. It's also #1 industry by headcount. It's growing rapidly, about 3 times faster than GDP, which is not necessarily good news. So the US healthcare cost was about 17% of GDP last year. It's going to hit 20% by 2020. And the growth is only accelerating because the baby boomers are retiring. So all the way until 2030, we're going to have increasing healthcare costs, and healthcare costs will grow faster than revenue. Healthcare is now #2 in terms of research and development budget. So we're behind technology, but we're ahead of energy and any other segments. Healthcare has #1 in terms of AI opportunities or AI startups. So if you look at the statistics where we see putting money, the largest amount of money, the largest number of deals is in healthcare across all the different parts of the healthcare industry. And of course, that's the most important industry for our lives. So today we're going to look at different individual use cases of AI in healthcare. And I like to break it into 3 different buckets. The first bucket is medical intelligence, which is different parts of diagnostics. The second bucket is going to be personalization, which is mostly on the treatment side. And finally, the last part will be about optimizing healthcare system. So if you look at medical diagnostics, most of diseases are diagnosed from lab results, which look like that, something like that. So you do tests, something goes off, and doctors can find what's wrong with you and start treatment. Now, there is a bunch of cases where traditional approaches don't work very well. Let me give you one example. The most expensive condition treated by the hospital today is called sepsis. So let's say you ride your bike, you hit a tree, something happened, you broke something. It may be, the doctor might fix something pretty fast and you're okay, but there is infection developed. And your body is weakened by the accident and by all the drugs you're taking. So let's say the infection takes hold. The infection is probably already in your lungs somewhere or somewhere in your body, but because you're weakened, it's able to develop much more rapidly. So what happens next is your body releases a bunch of chemicals to kill the infection, and this amount of chemicals can kill you. Now, the number of people affected by sepsis in the United States every year is close to 1 million people. If it happens at home, your best chance is to call 911 and try to get to the hospital. But in most cases, in many cases, the sepsis actually happens inside of the hospital. You're already in the hospital because something is wrong, so your system is weakened. You're susceptible to all kinds of diseases. And sepsis takes hold. So imagine you're in a hospital. You're surrounded by nurses and doctors and lab equipment and antibiotics. And yet you develop new diseases, which progress very rapidly. And in some cases, 3, 5, 7 days, you might die. 1 million people every year. Now, if the sepsis is caught early, the probability of success of treating is pretty good. So if the sepsis get caught early, your chance of survival is about 80%. If it's at the medium stage, about 50%. If it's late stage, it's about 30%. So the time is very critical. Every hour goes by, your probability of death goes up by 5 to 7%. Yet, diagnosis sepsis is very hard because most of the symptoms are what doctors call non-specific. So your heart rate goes up a little bit, or maybe it goes down. Your breathing goes a little bit faster, or maybe it will go slower. If you're old or young, it might go the opposite direction of what other people. And so how do you treat disease where the heart rate might go up or down? So hospitals are trying to work on this very problem very hard. Every hospital has alert systems, they have dashboards, but the problem is using traditional programming approaches, it's very hard to catch sepsis. Because how do you know if your heart rate elevated or you just went down the hallway and suddenly, your heart rate goes up and an alert system goes up and the nurses run around and they don't trust the system anymore. The problem is the traditional programming techniques are not very sensitive, and therefore they're trying to find a certain amount threshold in which point to raise an alert. But so they're missing all the early onset of sepsis and even not very accurate for late. So the sensitivity or complex pattern recognition that AI is able to offer us is the only way to solve those type of things. And sepsis is just one example. If you look at the kidney failure, there's plenty of papers show that you can predict kidney failure 2, 3, 4 months before it actually happens. Nothing in your body is random, right? It's not something that falls from the sky. There is some certain conditions which become different conditions until something happens. In case of diabetes, do you know how early you can predict it? 3 to 5 years. You can predict the onset of diabetes 3 to 5 years before it actually happens. And so you need the AI for that. But I think the challenge for AI is to try to catch conditions so early that you can reverse it, and therefore your own prediction is wrong. So prove yourself wrong, and that would be a successful AI algorithm. So this is just one example in medical intelligence space. So we have a bunch of different health monitoring devices coming. A lot of startups are developing new devices. Some devices are designed for the hospitals, when a big, complex, and take reading continuously. Other devices are consumer. Like I don't know if you know, but Apple has EKG now built into the consumer. The accuracy is not perfect, but it will get better. So a lot of the healthcare devices are coming up, which is very promising, and you can build AI software on any of them. And finally, imaging. So people often said that imaging is the easy case for AI. Well, it's partially true. It's the same type of algorithms you need to use for medical imaging as used for web pictures. The challenge with medical imaging is it's not one thing, right? you have about 20 different types of imaging, so cardiology, pathology, dermatology, dentist, orthopedic, ultrasound. So all are different type of imaging devices. And then for each type of imaging devices, they're used for different types of conditions. And for each type of conditions, you might need a bunch of different algorithms. You need to be able to detect the area where to look at. You might need fast algorithms for screening. You need accurate algorithms for diagnostics. You need algorithms for sizing, the amount of lesion. Anyway, so by the time you add it all together, we're looking for thousands of different algorithms which need to be developed with high degree of accuracy, high level of precision, and be sensitive to different noise in the data. It's very much a monumental achievement. So what you're going to find in imaging space is many of the companies, including us, are very open for partnerships because there is just no way one company, any company, no matter how big, can build all of the things that's needed to accomplish this goal. So the second group of use cases of AI in healthcare is, I call it personalization, but it's actually personalized approaches to treatment. So the state of the art in healthcare today is what's called evidence-based medicine. So evidence-based medicine says, based on your situation, the average procedure should be that. But based on your situation, what they're saying is the procedure that works on average for the population in general is such and such, but it might not be the best procedure for you at all. It actually might be detrimental for your health. So there are several areas where improvements can be made. One is precision medicine. This is a lot of the genetic stuff that people are working on. Precision medicine, this particular initiative was launched by Obama before he left the office. And it's a grand idea. So collect all of the information from 1 million people, which includes genetic information, all of the health records, lifestyle, everything. It's a grand, ambitious project, so it will, as usual, takes a few years to realize. But in many cases, if you can have a subset of data and just train your algorithm for this particular problem, you can get ahead much, much faster without waiting for the whole thing to be completed. Right now, we can track about 6 to 8% of different diseases to a particular genetic makeup. And some of the things that we can track are like some of the easiest ones, like genetic diseases. For most of the relationships between genetics and actual health outcomes, they're actually, the links are not direct. There are like many different steps in the middle. Genetics might determine certain body chemistry, which might determine some evolution, which blah, blah, blah. So using traditional methods, you cannot do much. With AI, you can. So there is a lot of people working on it, very, very promising area. Another good area is personalized treatment plans. For example, good paper from MIT looked at what can you do to treat cancer, right? So if you only have one goal to reduce the tumor as fast as possible, then the current treatment plans are perfect. However, if you have multiple goals, like we talked a lot about reinforcement learning today, like if you change your reward function where you want to minimize the tumor as well as like not to damage person's lifestyle too much, the set of decisions you're going to make will be quite a bit different. And when people run AI algorithms, they determine that in some cases you can skip dosage. You can reduce it by 50% or 75% in some cases. And in some cases, you might stop the treatment altogether if your algorithms determine that particular treatment plan is not effective for humans, so why poison the person with stuff. Clinical trials is an area which is very massive matching problem. So if you look about clinical trials, 80% of them fail because not enough patient enrolled. 80% of clinical trials failed. At the same time, if you are diagnosed with a cancer, only 3% of people diagnosed with cancer actually enrolled into something. So massive amount of mismatch. Clinical trials cannot find people are not enrolled anything. And in the past, you can say we don't have the data to find the people. But now we do have the data. All the data is somewhere in some system. In the past, you can say we cannot find the right person for a particular clinical trial, but we can do matching using AI today. So I think the last thing we need to solve is who owns what data, which is always a big deal in healthcare. And the final area is optimizing US healthcare system. The system is massive. The first one is smart electronic health system opportunity. You saw a great presentation from Microsoft person today with all the plans how they're going to make Excel smarter. Can you imagine if something like electronic health records will become optimized instead of being like 90s style menu-driven interface? In terms of transaction accuracy and streamlining, within the healthcare there is a category fraud, waste, and abuse. And the amount of fraud, waste, and abuse within the US healthcare system is larger than the amount of revenue of Google, Microsoft, Apple, Amazon combined. Have a huge amount of work there. And finally, patient identification and retention. Are you enrolled in the right plan? Do you know where you need to go? Do you know your screening? In most cases, the United States healthcare system is kind of random. You go to the hospital once something already broke, and you already need urgent care. And until this happens, basically not much is getting done. So overall, healthcare is actually not the easiest place to apply AI. First of all, there is a huge number of different opportunities. You can apply every algorithms mentioned during the conference. We have a lot of NLP, a lot of reinforcement learning, a lot of deep learning. We also have a lot of huge use cases. So, and all of them can result in very significant saving of life. One of the questions people often ask is, why can't I get a data set? And well, the answer is something you can give yourself. Like, would you like your personal information to be freely available on the internet or not? Some people say yes, right? But that's a small minority. In most cases, private data need to be respected. So some startups get a lot of VC money, hire a team, and then spend a year looking for data, right? So that's not the best idea. Figure out where the data is. And finally, understand the workflow. If you build something and it's not part of the existing workflow of the physician, you will have a very hard time getting things in. It has to fit, or it's not going to happen. So overall, healthcare is a very exciting space. There is tons of opportunity. That's the biggest opportunity in the revenue in the United States. We need your help to make it happen. Thank you.
Let's thank the speaker. We have time, 1 or 2 questions.
Hi, Alex. Great talk. My question was about medical intelligence and specifically like early diagnosis. So you mentioned that especially at Change, you guys have like access to so much data as opposed to like smaller startups who like focus on like specific instances and problems. Do you think especially for healthcare, since like problems can be so varied and so like each have like its own different like paradigm, do you think it's more important to have like a more centralized way of looking at this diagnosis where like one system oversees everything, or do you think like the specialization that startups are doing is the way to go?
Yeah, I think would be nice if one system has all of it. We actually, in terms of the total amount of data, we have more than everybody else, but it still is a very small percentage. So the thing I mentioned about the government program, National Institute of Health, Precision Medicine Initiative, that's the attempt to get all of the data for individual patients. That would be nice, but right now it's still an unreachable dream.
One more last question.
Hi, Alex, thanks for the great talk. And a lot of AI health startups run into tremendous difficulties. There were a lot of hype a couple of years ago, but most of them is, a lot of challenges. And one of them is what you mentioned, like the availability of data, and they have to look into other parts of the world to look for more open patient data and to get more, more data to start conduct the research. And another promising field seems like the community of, like, the online community. People self-select them, self-identify them into the discussion forum, and where you can find your clinical trial patients. So how do you think of the regulation role in this? Unless everybody sign a release form, you can put them into the database?
Yeah, regulation will continue to be a challenge. Actually, it's not improving. I don't know if it's going to improve. There are some companies that go to other countries where the regulation is less restrictive, so you can get more data. So especially if you have a specific type of problem, sometimes people go to India or some other countries. That's a good idea. It's also a good idea, I think, for startups is try to work with the existing companies. Like if you don't try to say, I own the data, right? You might not succeed, but say, okay, I'm going to be subcontracted to a particular hospital chain, which does have a data, and they remain the ownership, and I just own my algorithm, and kind of, maybe going like that. So don't go for the maximal, but, try to get the work done without full control of the situation.
Let's thank Alex.